Welcome to the Fallon Forum today. We would like to thank our organizational sponsors, the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club, Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility, and the Great March for Climate Action for helping to make this program possible. We'd also like to thank the Fallon Forum business partners and encourage you to patronize them. Thanks to Gateway Market and Cafe located at 20th and Woodland on the edge of downtown in the Sherman Hill neighborhood. Gateway's grocery section showcases many products from local farms and producers. Gateway is also a great place for breakfast, lunch, and supper, and offers a fantastic catering service as well. Thanks also to Hawk Restaurant at East 5th and Walnut in Des Moines East Village. At Hawk, 95% of the food served comes from Iowa farms and Iowa producers. Thanks also to Ritual Cafe at 13th and Locust in downtown Des Moines. Ritual is a great place for coffee, tea, smoothies, a full vegetarian menu, and music on the weekends. And finally, thanks to Diana's Wedding Cakes in Newton, serving the greater Des Moines Metro with customized cakes, cupcakes, cookies, and more. Ed, how's it going today?
Welcome to the Fallon Forum. My name is Ed, and I have an addiction problem. I think I do. I think I'm addicted to walking. I may also be addicted to fresh air. I think the fact that yesterday a mere 4-hour bus ride left me feeling like I wanted to claw my way out into the exterior air, that may indicate an addiction to fresh air. On the surface, those aren't bad things to be addicted to, but given the world in which we live and the extent to which we must be indoors and must not be mobile, it could be a problem. Today, it's just between walking to places where I had work to do and one meeting with a friend for lunch. I walked like 8.6 miles. Maddie, why am I doing these things to myself? I have to rest my feet, I am told.
I'm not a doctor.
I know you're not. I'm not a scientist, but still, I know that climate change is happening, and you know that my feet are messed up. Plantar fasciitis, you're supposed to rest. I can't rest though. I want to walk. My legs are so eager to move, tired though they be. They're so used to moving. Anyway, before we have two different guests on today that are going to talk about some of the things that climate marchers are doing. There is no rest. I know there's an expression, there is no rest for the wicked. I think there's also no rest for the righteous. And this is a group of people who have acted with a tremendous righteousness for the past 8 months, and many for much longer, many for years working on the climate crisis, which is not going away, is not getting better. But what I'm encouraged about is the extent to which the public seems to be understanding that we have a problem and we've got to do something about it. So those of us who understand this, we're doing things. I'll tell you more later about what I'm doing, but right now I just got to tell you one reflection on today's marching. No, actually it's walking around New York City. Along the track of this march, all along the march, from California to D.C., a lot of us were looking for monarch butterflies. And in fact, in West Branch, Iowa, we had a presentation by a woman, Grandt. I cannot remember Gwinnett's last name, but she has done a beautiful choreography of monarch butterfly dances. It is absolutely fantastic. And you should see it. There's a video online, Dancing with Monarchs, something to that effect. It'll pop up. Anyway, we learned from her monarchs are really struggling. Milkweed is the key plant that they need to not just survive, to thrive, and to be able to make that incredible migration of 2,000 miles in some cases from North America to Mexico, which I know is still part of North America. So I'll correct myself before you do. But the frequency with which we were seeing monarchs along our trek this year was disturbing, minimal. And so I was delighted. Now I've been walking. I've walked about 8 miles to Manhattan today, and I have not seen a single milkweed plant. I can't imagine there is a milkweed plant in Manhattan. I mean, every square inch of this place is prime real estate. It's either a manicured park or a building. And there I was blowing up Lafayette Street toward the Empire State Building, one lone milkweed seed. And I saw that, and I smiled, a big smile. And I imagine, there's a lot of crazy people in New York, so maybe if you're walking along and you've got a walking stick and you see a milkweed seed and you smile, people don't think you're crazy, or they think you're crazy, but they don't really care. And anyway, I see this milkweed seed, and I break into a big smile. and it's blowing up the street. A little bit windy today. So I get on my phone and I put it on video, and I start videotaping this milkweed seed blowing up part of a pathway down into the subway. And I'm thinking, no, little milkweed seed, do not go down into the subway. That is the tomb of death for milkweed seeds. Keep going up Lafayette Street until you hit Central Park. Find a nice, moist, your loose pile of soil and plant yourself there and do the monarchs a favor. And anyway, I posted a little video about me chasing a milkweed seed around Manhattan today on my Facebook page if you have nothing better to do with your time. Anyway, with this program, we have a lot better things to do with our time, including later in the program, we're going to talk with Doug Grandt about the political action side of what's happening as marchers go forward and do good things in their communities for climate action. But I want to first welcome John Abbe to the program. John is from Eugene, Oregon, but he remains in Washington, D.C., where he is has been active with the direct action at FERC. That is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. This is an agency that has come under great scrutiny and great criticism because it is permitting the expansion of fracking for natural gas production. This is a huge problem. I know sometimes the president and others are trying to paint natural gas as the warm and fuzzy fossil fuel alternative to coal and oil. Do not be fooled. The methane released from natural gas is a huge problem for climate change, as is the production, the extraction of natural gas itself. And so FERC has been just rubber stamping every permit that comes along that the natural gas companies want to see a rubber stamp. So I'm excited to know that there is some positive action going on to call attention to what FERC is doing. And I have not been tracking the details, John, so I'm delighted to have you on the program. And I know our audience will be interested in hearing what's been happening in Washington, D.C. today in front of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission building. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ed. Thanks, Ed. It's strange to be talking with you over the phone after being on the march the whole way together. But, yeah, it was a rousing success, I would say, today. Not only, so we covered all three entrances at FERC. Some people did manage to slip into work. There was a bit of cat and mouse with the police. So some people did get through while we were there. But there was no mistaking that we were there, and we handed out a lot of information to them and had some good conversations with them. Ultimately, 25 of us were arrested there at FERC, and we also found out that 7 people were arrested at Cove Point in Maryland, which is where a lot of our local allies here have been protesting an export facility there that FERC permitted. And 15 more people were arrested up at Seneca Lake, where another marcher, Faith Meckley, who I think has been on your program, has been one of the leaders in a group there trying to stop a natural gas storage facility in an unsafe salt cavern there next to Seneca Lake, threatening that whole region. So, really we're going on all fronts here, just trying to make it clear to people, like you said, that natural gas it's the bridge fuel to nowhere. And we need to get FERC to, completely change their attitude on that.
So let me back up a little bit for the sake of my audience. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission building is in Washington, D.C. I guess it has 3 entrances, and there were enough people involved in this protest where you were able to block all 3 entrances. Now, you said something I didn't understand. Some people got inside the building?
Not the activists, but the people who work there.
Okay. So the blockade of the 3 entrances was largely successful. Some people did get into work.
Yeah.
And how long did that last before police decided to arrest you?
Well, they were there and ready for us. They had barricades up in front of each entrance, which made it a little more difficult. But I want to say also at the front entrance, we had a huge blow-up, 10-foot tall images of families that have been affected negatively by fracking already, and then a beautiful cardboard drama of a town that was then glued down in front. And so at some point, in order to remove the protest, the police in the service of FERC had to destroy yet another town. And
so this was kind of a cardboard cutout town that symbolize the many communities that are being damaged because of fracking.
Exactly. And many of the communities and people we met on the way, including Maggie Henry, who has had the fur farm, was right there with us.
In western Pennsylvania, just between the Ohio border and heading toward Pittsburgh. Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
So how was the press coverage of the event?
I don't know yet. We've been running all day. We had additional actions in the afternoon, and I haven't had a full chance to check that out yet. But we had a lot of media, website or Facebook page, or at least the Facebook page, and a coalition member. And then we.
And I know that our audience in Northeast Iowa, where frac sand mining has been going on, and now, well, actually, the two companies have put in moratoriums preventing any additional expansion of that. But they're very interested in this conversation, and I imagine they know very well who FERC is, even though I don't know if I don't know if FERC weighs in on questions relevant to the mining of sand for fracking. That may be extra. That may be beyond what they do. But now this is not a one-time hit. There are other actions planned at FERC the rest of this week, correct?
Every morning this week, and I'm very heartened by our debrief conversation afterwards. A number of people, including one woman who said she's been arrested, many times since 1983. She said this was one of the best groups that she's ever worked with, and I attribute a lot of that to our march. You talked about being addicted to walking. I think one of the addictions I suffer from is community, and we really built an amazing community on this march, and I'm sure that contributed a lot to the positive feel among people and the flexibility. We did a lot of running around back and forth and adjusting to what was happening, and everybody at the debrief really appreciated that.
Good. Well, John, I appreciate the update, and thank you again for your continued activism. We certainly, I think it's pretty clear that from a scientific point of view, we need all hands on deck at this point. And so I'm glad that you're continuing to do that. And if you feel like giving us an update later this week, I'd love to hear more.
We'll do that.
All right. Thank you. John Abbe, folks, from Eugene, Oregon, a participant in the Great March for Climate Action, calling us from Washington, D.C., summarizing what went on at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission building today in response to their relentless pursuit of rubber stamping permits for expanding natural gas production. Okay, we're going to flip to the other side of the climate activism scale. My feeling is that all tools should be used in this battle, all tools that are violent. There is so much to do, and again, time is of the essence. I've got a long history of political activism myself, and my feeling is that at some point soon, if we're not there already, this will become a bipartisan issue. And I look at Northeast Iowa, where we have one county that is solidly Republican and one county that leans Democrat and is, fairly mixed. Both counties have approved moratoriums on frac sand mining. In my own travels across this country, I met lots of people, self-described Republicans, self-described conservatives, who agree with me that climate change is an issue and things need to be done. I'm intrigued. I mean, this is the timing of this march was interesting because we had to. The march was happening during the prime campaign season in the midterm elections. Obviously, landing in Washington, D.C. a couple days or 3 days before the election is, a problematic timing in terms of getting people to shift and focus on anything but the election. And then, again, I'm glad that John Abbe and others are working on that even as we speak. But the focus of America's attention on anything related to a crisis like climate change or any issue at all is on politics, is on the midterm elections. And so I'm glad to know there are people who've been involved in this march who've taken their walking shoes, and instead of walking with us across the country, for one reason, they have shifted to focusing on walking for candidates that they believe are focused on addressing the climate crisis. And one of those is Doug Grandt, who joined us on the climate march for a while in the western half of the march. Doug is in Lincoln, Nebraska. Doug, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Ed. Good to be here.
Yeah, so you've been You did not retire your walking shoes. You've been using them continuously, I hear.
Well, not continuously, but I do wear the same shoes that I was on the march because they're really, really nice. They're some really nice sandals. But the last several weeks I've been hoofing it for Dave Domina here in Lincoln.
Yeah, and to what extent is the climate issue prominent in elections in Nebraska? I know the Keystone Pipeline is a huge issue nationally, and I know from my experience walking through Nebraska, it's something that a lot of people are very keen on, especially in the central part of the state. Is it an issue that you see getting some discussion during the campaign season?
Well, it seems to be getting more and more. The main issue here is the land and the soil and eminent domain. And the governor candidate, Chuck Hasselbrook, actually has come out and addressed the Keystone as being linked to climate change. So one of the gubernatorial candidates, or both of them? Just one. He's the only one in the state, I think, that's really talked about it openly. Okay. I mean, Dave Domina, who I'm supporting for Senate, talks about climate, but he doesn't make it the number one issue. Really the issue that gets people's attention is eminent domain, the fact that there's a Canadian company coming in and taking people's land and using brutal tactics to coerce them. And the fact that if there's a spill, it could damage the soil, would definitely damage the soil and the Ogallala Aquifer.
Yeah. Now, I have a theory, Doug, that bold Nebraska and groups across the country have made the Keystone Pipeline such a huge issue that President Obama may, after the election, decide to ixnay it. And that will...
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah, I think that might happen. My concern is that the fossil fuel industry is finding other ways of getting that oil from Alberta and from North Dakota and perhaps other places down to refineries in Texas for export. They're going to find another way to do that. And one of those ways might be through Iowa. There is a proposal, as you probably know, that would run a pipeline. It's the longest, if you wanted to draw a line across Iowa, this would be the longest possible line from the northwest corner to the southeast corner, over 400 miles through 17 counties. And what's happening in Iowa is I wouldn't call it a coalition yet, but you've got people on both sides of the political aisle that are expressing concerns about that are coming out against it. And a lot of it has to do with the use of eminent domain, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that we cannot continue to expand our fossil fuel consumption infrastructure if we're going to get our arms around the climate problem. So it's an issue here in Iowa as well. It's not being discussed as much as it needs to be. But let me ask you this, just to get down to the nitty-gritty. When it comes to, I mean, some people think, well, I'm not going to get involved in a political campaign because it doesn't make a difference. They're all the same. And I get tired of that because I know they're not all the same. Because I was one of them, and I'm not all the same. I'm not the same as everybody else. I'm not. Really, come on. Look at my record. And and also, and the other thing is, they're all the same, or my vote doesn't count. Well, you know, I stand between two lawmakers, one who won by 14 votes, the other won by 142 votes. Tell them that your vote doesn't matter. Or for that matter, tell Al Gore that your vote doesn't matter. It's the bigger the election, the bigger a local elections. Gosh, you often see elections, that are won by just a few votes. Oftentimes, even in the state legislature, in Iowa, we will have several races that are won by less than 20 votes. There's no doubt about it. This tomorrow. But for it to happen at the presidential level, that's happened a couple times even at that level. So I get tired of people say, "Oh, my vote doesn't matter." So how do you make your vote matter most, Doug? Well, what do you do to make sure your vote matters more?
Well, I already voted, and what I've been doing is canvassing, which I've really not done much canvassing. I've done a lot of phone banking over the years, And one time in California, I did, I don't know, for about a month, I called for 2 or 3 hours a night, several hundred people, maybe 1,000 people over that period of time. I got my elevator speech down to 30 seconds, and it was a tease. And basically, everybody I talked to liked the tease enough. I would say, would you like me to tell you more? And they'd say yes. So in that short little intro, I was able to present the case that they knew made sense, which was voting for solar. That was the yes on 7 proposition, which was about 4 or 5 years ago. Today, for example, I dropped the leaflet off at a house, and the people weren't home, but there was a guy working in the driveway, sawing some wood and he was building something. And I got to talking to him, and he engaged me in a conversation about why Domina. And he said, he had been run through the ringer this morning trying to convince people to vote for one of the competitors who was I think he was an independent or maybe a libertarian, I'm not sure. And he said, tell me about Dave. So I spent about a minute, and he said, actually the conversation lasted a little bit longer because he was more interested in my background, who am I. But in the 1 minute of pitch convinced him, he decided to vote for Domina. So by being out there and engaging people, I'm getting more votes than just me.
So he really had not made up his mind.
He pulled out his little slip. He had checked off the other guy. He decided he was going to vote for the other guy, and he changed it based on that 1 minute conversation.
Wow, good. Okay.
So you can have a difference just by being there physically in their face and having a pleasant conversation. You don't know who you're talking to, so you've got to be kind of pleasant and not antagonistic, and maybe not too passionate, but you kind of come across as a real person. And
most everything in life, and certainly politics, is about relationships. And sure, when you knock on a door, the chances are you don't know that person. That person doesn't know you, but you've got a chance to make an impression, to establish a very, a very fresh, new relationship, a very shallow one maybe on one level. Maybe when they got to know you, they wouldn't like you as much. But
in fact, just to hitchhike on that, I talked to probably, I don't know, maybe you would say a dozen or possibly 2 people, because you don't want to go overboard and really take their time. But in a 30-second conversation, you can say, I really like Dave. I met him several months ago, and I believe he's the right guy that can go in and do something about this gridlock. And just in the way you say it, the people maybe really didn't have an opinion or might even have been swayed the other way. Now they're thinking, here's a guy that likes him.
Good. Well, Doug, I think that's really important work, and I wish more people would take the time to do that. And I think if more people did take the time to do that, money in politics would matter less. Because that guy might have checked off the person he decided to vote for based on some ad, and then when you added a personal connection to the election, it changed his mind. So again, I commend you for that, and I know there's going to be a lot of continued climate action coming out of this climate march, and I hope there's a good balance of street action and political action. We'll see what happens. Anyway, Doug, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck tomorrow.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks, Ed, for putting the walk together. I really enjoyed it.
Great. Well, somebody else can do the next one. All right, folks. For myself, I'm giving it some thought. I'm not quite ready to talk about what I want to do, but I will be by the end of this week. I'm learning in life that you should not count a chicken before it has laid the egg that will then hatch. I took that metaphor too far, but the bottom line is it's good to sit back and think carefully about what you want to say or do before you do it. So I tell you, I'm close to knowing what I want to focus on, how I want to take this climate march to the next level, because I really do believe that all the organizing that went into this and all the marching that happened, and for me it was every step of the way. I still can't believe that some universal power greater than me enabled me to do that, because I really tell you, I don't know how. Me on my own could not have done that. Something was moving me to do that. But I do think that the most powerful impacts that this march is going to have are yet to come. And I think we see some of that happening in Washington, D.C. We see it happening in upstate New York. We see it happening in the kind of work that Doug and others are doing as well. So stay tuned, folks. Later this week, I'll have for you some more information about what my plans are shaping up to be. Anyway, it's been great talking with you. If you're listening on KHOI or KPVL 89.1 FM, stay tuned for part 2 of this program. I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of my fascinating experiences going off on my own for a week, walking without any support, any preparation, and one day that was incredibly difficult. But if I had to do it over again, I would do it differently. But I'll tell you about some of the people I met on that trek as well that I think I'll be keeping in touch with. Anyway, it's been a good conversation, folks. If you're listening live on the Fallon Forum website, join me back tomorrow at 6 o'clock p.m. Again, if you're listening on the radio, stay tuned for part 2 shortly. Thanks to Maddie Kane, my producer, and thanks to Webcast One Live for providing the studio.
We would again like to thank the Fallon Forum business supporters, including Kelly's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering, located in the heart of Beaverdale, serving lunch and supper daily, breakfast on Sunday, and featuring Des Moines' first ever rooftop dining. Thanks also to Corazon Coffee Roasters, located in Valley Junction and specializing in fair trade coffee and fair trade tea. And thanks again to our organizational sponsors, the Iowa Chapter of the Sierra Club, Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility, and the Great March for Climate Action for helping to make this program possible.